So the lymphatic fluid, which is being drained out of the interstitial space, is collected up in the lymphatic capillaries, then to the lymphatic vessels. As you breathe, as you move, as you utilize your skeletal muscles, it squeezes those vessels, and because of the valves, these one-way valves, it keeps moving the fluid along back toward the venous side of the circulatory system and such. It moves in. When it's traveling up these vessels and such, it flows into a lymph node. It enters in through a area, and then it travels through not capillaries, but these more open areas known as sinuses and such. And it goes through the cortex, and then it moves into the medulla, and then it eventually leaves and such. And it leaves out an area known as a hilus and all. And a hilus, think of your kidney, or think of a kidney bean. And the concave area of that is the hilus. That's what it looks like and such. As it moves through and as it's filtered through, it leaves, it takes T cells with it, it takes plasma cells, it takes antibodies. Anything produced in that node is going to travel along with it and such, finding its way back to the circulatory system and imparting immunity or aiding in fighting off infections. Sometimes the system picks up cancer cells or cancerous cells, and they can follow these lymphatic vessels. They can lodge in these lymph nodes. They can then move, get to the circulatory system, and then end up anywhere. By knowing these pathways, you can kind of look back and see where the cancer originated. And then you can look at the lymph nodes and you can say how many have been infiltrated, and you can kind of guess or degree the amount of movement of the cancer, and this spread is known as metastasis. So another organ is your spleen. It's in that left hypochondriac region and such. It has a body. The body is called the stroma. Stroma means body, and the body is composed of this functional tissue. This is a parenchyma, and it's two parts that you can notice on a microscope slide. An area right around an artery that passes through, that's the white pulp. And then the rest of it, the rest of the body, if you will, is the red pulp. Blood travels through the spleen, not lymph. So the spleen, although it is lymphatic and all, it actually helps to filter the blood and remove old and worn out red blood cells. That's one of its main jobs. Such. It's also a reservoir for blood, reservoir for platelets. Any bacteria that might be in the blood is going to be attacked and removed, hopefully removed from the spleen and such. And it's also, since you will have antigens in the blood show up there, you will have B cells there in that white pulp, and they will be shown the antigen through this antigen presenting process, and then that will trigger them into differentiating or into becoming plasma cells. And then the plasma cells are the types of immune cells which produce antibodies. You can damage the spleen. You can live without the spleen. But if you do that, the liver picks up the blood filtering job of the spleen. So now, nodules, different from nodes. I think I mentioned this earlier in the previous one. They are lymphatic tissues. They're just not encapsulated. And so you won't see the lobules or the nodules, if you will. They're found in that lamina propria, this first layer of connective tissue underneath your epithelium, right underneath the mucous membrane. And all of your plumbing, if you will, that is exposed or open to the outside world, right underneath it has this lamina propria, this lymphatic tissue. Since it's found underneath this mucous membranes, it's known as the MALT, mucosa-associated lymphoid tissue. You'll have areas of it in the small intestine known as Peyer's patches found out, and then they really increase as you get closer to the large intestine. And where the small intestine meets the large intestine, you have a ileocecal valve. And that first little terminal end of the large intestine is known as the cecum. And if you go inferior to that, if you go south, you run into the uh, appendix and such. So if you think about the bacterial communities, the flora and the fauna there that's in your large intestine, in your bowel, you don't want that in the small intestine. And so you have those Peyer's patches to help prevent that bacteria from leaving where it's supposed to be and getting to places where it's not supposed to be. Your tonsils and such are another example of these Peyer's patches, another example of these nodules. Your tonsils and such, you have 3 sets. The pharyngeal are at the back of your nasopharynx, the palatine are at the back of your oral pharynx, and then the lingual tonsils are at the underneath your tongue or at the base of the tongue. You stick a tongue depressor in, push the tongue down, look at the back of the throat, and you'll notice these large swellings on the left and right side, and those are the palatine tonsils, which everybody just commonly calls tonsils. If you put a scope in and look up, or if you look through the nose to the back, you can see the pharyngeal tonsils, and everybody just collectively, they just call those adenoids and all. So in tonsillectomies, they'll usually remove the palatine, and if need be, they'll remove the adenoids. But the lingual tonsils are not removed during a tonsillectomy, just the adenoids and the tonsils, if you will. So, okay, resistance. Your body's ability to fight off an invader, some sort of disease-causing organism, some sort of pathogen, or some sort of toxic substance that the pathogen might produce. Gram-negative bacteria will produce endotoxins, and that can cause infections and such, and your body has this ability to fight that off and such. So you have different types of resistance. You have a non-specific, so this is really not involving the immune system, but this is your general, keeps things out. And your first one is your skin and your mucous membranes. That's why I see people wearing gloves, I get tickled. You really don't absorb many things through your skin. Individuals wear gloves to prevent what's on their skin from getting to someone else and all. So it is a mechanical barrier. Not much can pass through it if it's good and healthy and such. And then your mucous membranes. That's, if you go inside your body cavities, if you can put your finger on it, it's a mucous membrane. Any body cavity, all body cavities, open to the outside and such. It is not keratinized, so it's not as an effective layer as your epidermis, which does have that waxy protein, keratin in it, but it does help. It does aid. The mucus that it produces traps things, and the hair filters things. The cilia keeps the mucus out of places. Tears wash things out. Such saliva helps with urinating, defecating, vomiting. All of these are forms of non-specific resistance. There is a chemicals produced by your body which aid in this. The sebum, which is this oil-like material produced from your sebaceous glands and all, and it helps to keep your pH of your skin kind of low, 3 to 5 and such. The lysozymes, these are little vacuoles or vesicles and such, contain very powerful digestive enzymes, and they're found in your sweat, your tears, your saliva and such. Your gastric juices, the stomach has a very low pH, helping to remove bacteria and toxins that you might have ingested. And the vagina, because of the lactobacillus bacteria that is there, actually helps maintain a very low pH to keep invaders out of that area as well.